will
This
be available
conference will
on
now
the
be
NNAHRA
recorded.
YouTube channel by this afternoon. And if you have any questions or just want to bring up a point, please utilize your chat box. We want to have this as interactive. We love to hear Chris and Luke speak. But if you have any thoughts, please utilize the chat. So take it away, Chris and Luke.
You bet. First off, thank you, Janet, Mike, and Judy. We're just honored to be some small part of this organization and to be in service to Indian country and Native enterprise across the United States. I'm a member of the Cherokee Nation. A little bit of background: I was a general manager and director of marketing for Cherokee Nation Entertainment prior to establishing Purpose and Performance Group. And what was interesting is I was actually a general manager in an organizational development graduate program at the University of Oklahoma. That's where Luke and I originally met in 2010. And using the casinos that I was responsible for leading as a learning lab, we started issuing organizational interventions and measuring outcomes as part of a larger research project. So the things that we talk about today and the things that our organization does, it's really about just closing the gap between what science knows and what businesses practice. I say that I'm a marketer by trade. I love building vibrant, potent brands, but I'm an organizational developer by practitioner. Like it really takes heavy people focus to create vibrant brands for service organizations. And that's what we get to talk about every day across Indian country. We primarily work in Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. It's just primarily where our travels have taken us up to now. But the work that we do and the people we get to interact with and be in service to, it's just an honor to do this work every day. Luke, any introduction here?
Sure. First off, I just want to say thank you again to Janet, Mike, Judy, and the rest of the NNAHRA board. Really looking forward to our conversation today. As Chris said, we created Purpose and Performance Group really as an outcome of studies and projects in organizational psychology, organizational strategy, graduate work, and it has been so fun to apply those to tribal enterprise. My spouse and all three sons are tribal citizens, and I'm very passionate about tribal communities being as healthy and as performance driven and successful as possible. And so that's why I get out of bed every day. I want to invite leaders and teams into what's next, into whatever that next level of performance is for them. And just really honored to get to do that with an amazing team at Purpose and Performance Group. So today we're going to talk about organizational character, and I can kind of start with like, why am I interested in that? And we kind of define organizational character as this idea that when organizations act in a way that aligns with what they say they believe, that's character. You can think about a person as well. So for me as an individual, I can choose to act in ways that don't align with my character. Sometimes I intentionally maybe choose that. A lot of times it's an accident. But if I'm to be a person of high character, one way to define that is I really act in a way that aligns with what I say I believe and my values. And I got interested in this, just a quick story. I was working with an organization and they had someone leave, and we're going to talk about different people practices later, recruiting, onboarding, people development, recognition. But this is really a story about offboarding. And they had a team member who had been with the organization several years. There was employee housing involved, and the person resigned. And in that resignation and kind of, well, how's this going to play out? They negotiated, I'd like to stay on site in this house for 2 months. Let's land on a date that I'm moved out as I'm, getting my next thing lined up. Organization totally agreed to that. Now, should they or should they not have? I don't know, but they agreed to do that. So he resigned, and a month later, they said, hey, we need your house. We've got someone else coming in, and really like pulled the rug out from under him and his family. And for me, that example of a lack of character, a lack of saying, this is what we're going to commit to, and then here's how we're following up with someone who has been a valuable member of our team. It showed that words about community, words about employment that made a difference in people's lives were a little bit hollow, and it eroded the credibility for that organization. And so that's one of the reasons that I really wanted to dive into this topic as we started working with executive leadership teams, senior leadership teams. How do we define character and help people live in ways that build high levels of organizational character? Chris?
Yeah, and I mean, I think looking at it, why am I interested, or what has me interested? It's because in every organization we go into, there's the mission or the vision and the values, or there's something on a wall somewhere. And like the character is derived by the spirit of that being in the hearts and minds of every employee. And it's so much about mindset and how we approach people. In what I have witnessed is you see something that says, we're going to be the employer of choice, right? Employer and destination of choice. And then I get into the experience of this, and I think every employee is evaluating, like, did I make the right decision in choosing to spend my time here? And they're evaluating their decision every day. And the words on the wall come with a caveat, or they should have an asterisk. We're going to be the employer of choice if only you fill out these bundles of paperwork for the first 4 hours you're here. If only you can suffer through someone else telling you what you are during our performance management session. If only you can stomach it, seeing the managers get things before frontline gets things. Then we'll be the employer of choice. So like it's this asterisk, right? And like it's really taking what is the vision for this organization. And as I survey organizations across Indian country, like the thing I love about tribes is it's always about nurturing, stewardship, developing, growing, community, prosperity, vibrance. Like it's these things that we believe. And when these things are active in organizations, you cannot compete with an organization where those things are active. Those are the strongest brands. But it feels like a lot of times Native Enterprise and our organizations accept practices from corporate entities, from commercial existence, from people that do things because that's how a different organization says to do them.
This conference will now be recorded.
People practices need to be multiple. Yeah, so these people practices that we're issuing, they really call out to be for this organization based on what it believes. We do these things this way because we believe this way. But we accept outside influence into our communities that creates misalignment. And that's what's called me to the work that we do every day. So that's just my observations and why I'm so passionate about this work. Just kind of keeping in mind that a community can only be as vibrant as the experience of those team members and the customers. Like, we're never going to be anything more than that. And that's why, it's kind of where this whole idea comes from, right? The character of leaders is only evidenced by the employee experience they deliver. And we know that our guests or customers are never going to receive anything that a team member doesn't receive. So
yeah, I know when we first, started working with leaders on this and we put this statement up, it's like, I don't know. But the more that I've reflected on it, and I think the more that senior leaders reflect on it, like it's really hard to wiggle out from. it's really hard to say I'm a person of high character and here's this outcome that's clearly not something I would say that I'm okay with, but within my circle of influence, it's happening and I'm doing nothing about it. And so whenever we have those conversations, it's not about shaming someone. It's not about saying, hey, your character is not showing up, right? I think it can be easy for folks to feel a little threatened. But the point is, how do we get intentional and take ownership of the way our character shows up in the employee experiences of every team member that we have some measure of influence over? And I think, before we go on, I just want to put a question in the chat box, so I'll enter it in there. But I'm just curious from folks, what are some behaviors you've witnessed from organizations that caused you to question organizational character? Chris talked about the values having an asterisk next to them, the values on the wall. Are there things that you've witnessed that you're like, okay, that tells me that that value that's on the wall really has an asterisk, and I have to be a little bit different or maybe a little bit more cynical about how I relate to this organization? So feel free to enter that. We'd love to see people's examples.
Yeah, and as people are doing that, I want to call out, like, it's why we speak to the fact that the transformation of culture within an organization, it starts with the courage of one leader. Like, it's the one leader that will follow their compass and interpret that vision or mission or values and activate those and bring those to life. If one person does it, more people will follow. And it's just that courage, and how we define courage is aligning how I act with what I believe. And so this entire conversation today is about courage. And we know what the values of our tribal communities are. And it becomes like, are we courageous enough to activate those things in the way that we understand them within our workplaces?
Yeah, just some really powerful examples here in the chat. Yelling at staff, lack of transparency, exceptions of policy, and lack of resourcing. Hey, we expect you to do this, but we expect you to just pull yourself up by your bootstraps to behave that way. We're not going to help you get there. We're just going to expect you to do it. Not following through. A lot of these things, I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, so Chris, pull me back out. But I just think about confidence in our path, confidence in our strategy, confidence that the way we do something as an organization is the direction that's right for our community. And I think when you find leaders that don't have that confidence, and maybe they haven't done the work to like verbalize, what is our vision? What is our strategy? What are the highest priorities this year? When you haven't done that work, it makes it really hard then to follow through in a confident way to say, I can be transparent about how things are prioritized, about how we make decisions, right? If I'm just being pulled this way and that by whatever wind is blowing that day, yeah, of course I'm maybe going to be a little bit defensive about going back on my word or not following through or not sharing how a decision was made.
Agreed. And so there's a lot of ways to fill that, what we call dissonance, right? That disconnect, to fill that gap between what I believe and what I'm supposed to do because I'm a part of an organization. And we have to resolve that some way, right? We have to resolve that. Either we're miserable or we leave. Or we align our operating environment to what we believe. Those are the choices. Okay, we do the courageous work, we stay in a suffering state, or we leave the organization. Getting clarity and embracing that fact, I think, allows us to be courageous. But I've got a follow-up question to the folks here today, and that is, what are the what are the practices of an organization that define its character? You know, how do you interpret the character of an organization? How, maybe in your role, what are you advocating that would communicate the character of your organization? So as you guys drop those in the chat box, Luke, what are some of the things that you look at as defining the character of an organization?
Yeah, so we talked about the purpose or the values on the wall. It's easy to be cynical about that, especially if we've been, seen those asterisks come up time and time again. But it is really difficult to leave that practice behind and be as clear as we want to be about what's important inside an organization. So rather than saying we don't want to waste time on that, what I see is that when organizations really invest the right time on beginning with the end in mind, who are we? What is it that we want to believe? What behaviors do we want to commit to here? That time is always has pretty high return on investment if we can really move those things once we decide on them. So let's say, we have one client and one of their core values is grit. And I remember when we helped them come up with those words, right? We didn't say that their value was grit, but we got to know them enough that we could say, I think this is one of the things that defines you. I don't think you've put words to that yet. And so we showed up, we revealed kind of the purpose that we had written out for them and their values, and the leadership team got a little misty-eyed, which always is a good sign that we're kind of on the right track. And grit was one of those that showed up because we had seen it, but we went the next step to say, what are the behaviors that we do that are gritty? And there were 4 or 5 different things. And so if we only stopped there, people tearing up saying, yes, that's us, that's really why we show up to work every day and get out of bed, like that's not enough. What we then have to do is go and drive that all the way through their performance management processes, their employee, talent attraction processes, so recruiting, what does onboarding look like? We really have to clarify, how do those 5 values or those 5-ish behaviors that really demonstrate grit, how do those show up in onboarding? How do those show up in the hardest, they were a professional services firm, the hardest interactions they had with clients? What does grit look like whenever they're up against the wall, right? And so by defining those, putting it in evaluation processes, rewriting handbook, we really could make that a little bit more real and less of something that really risks just being a value on the wall, right? So I do think purpose, values, those behavioral commitments is one. And then the other big one that comes to mind for me is a communications framework. So a cadence of how often are we doing all hands? Are we really committed to doing all hands? Does every single one of our departments have at least a monthly meeting where that senior leader has a standing agenda and we know that they're communicating out the most important things that are priorities for us, that are values? Do we know how our KPIs or our scorecard or our outcomes are getting communicated back out to our team members? Is that happening weekly? Is it happening monthly? So really figuring out that communications framework, those feedback loops, and then committing to them, because you guys know, like, leaders don't want to do them, right? Those things traditionally have taken back seat to just getting the stuff done day in and day out. So how do we identify our communications plan, then really commit to it? So those are a couple of things for me. Chris, how about you?
Yeah, I really like the communications angle. The other thing I want to tack on to your communications framework is your check-ins. Like, is there an expectation that every week, every leader is checking in with their direct reports as part of a really performance development mindset? But also, to the point in the chat, like, character is revealed through the types of development opportunities that we provide. Like, do we have a coaching culture, or do we have a transacting directive culture? the character of an organization is revealed in the mindset and the approach of how they develop and grow people, because that ties directly to community. The other thing that you're going to hear me talk against, like, not painting with one brush. Like, we have recognition programs or service award programs. It's like, don't die and don't get fired, get a prize. Okay, great. People need recognized for that. But how are we recognizing the actual needs of our team members in this time and space? Because some team members might have needs for transportation. Some might have food security needs right now. Some might have housing needs. But it breaks my heart when I'm staying in a casino property that makes $100 million a year and the person that cleaned my room is sleeping in the parking lot. Like, that is a true story that happens in the organizations that we lead. And I'm not like, I can't solve the economics of that. I can't control what job roles pay, but what are the things we can do? Like, is it about shower facilities? Is it about expanding RV capacities? Like, I don't know, but I mean, those are the courageous challenges that I think face us. But I definitely think that the ability to meet recognized needs at each level within the organization is a reflection of an organization's character.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I know you got more, Chris, but I want to call out a couple of things in the chat. So one is like what an organization does when someone's in crisis. So similar to what you're saying about someone who's unable to provide affordable housing in maybe the high-end community that a enterprise is placed in, right? How do we deal with that? Another is like death in the family, things like that. How do we respond? And then the other, someone mentioned DEI, and I just want to take that opportunity to say, we see a lot of leadership teams, and this especially happens with publicly traded companies that we work with. For whatever reason, like, let's all just be grateful that we're not in that space in Native Enterprise. Like, we see people, I would say, outsourcing their character to third parties, right? When I hire a consultant to tell me what I need to do to check a box on diversity, inclusion, environmental impact, things like that, that's me saying, you tell me what I think should be important, because I don't want to think about it. What we would really encourage leaders is, no, where's the line for you? What aligns with your values? What aligns with your character? And yes, there are some considerations in who we do business with and in the ecosystem that we probably need to talk about some things we haven't talked about before, but like, really, you have to do the work to think about what is your standard. And then we can talk about, okay, what are some tactical ways that we can implement that standard? But this idea of outsourcing character in any area, I think gets dangerous. It's a dangerous habit, right? We need external expertise sometimes, but we can't have other people tell us what our morals should be, right? At some point as a leader, you just have to own that and say, this is my standard. Come hell or high water, I'm probably going to have to behave in a way that aligns with that standard.
Yeah, and I want to call out, like, where I'm sitting today here at Three Rivers and the development of their purpose. And this is keyed off of what Stephanie here said. Stephanie says, kindness beyond policy in support of the employee experience is key. Like, it's an unlock. And I would say 100%. And with that, I'll share the story of Three Rivers Casino. Traditionally, I hear, the 12 executives in suits go to the mountain and they come down with the purpose or the mission and the values. Like, that's not, you're automatically creating a cascade that's difficult to implement. I'll share the story of Three Rivers. We had 63 people in a room working on this purpose. And at the end of 8 hours or 9 hours, we were there till it was done. Everyone in the organization was invited. And at the end of 9 hours, we walk away with every day we deliver uncommonly kind experiences that connect people to the coast. It doesn't say, you know, the casino has to make a lot of money. It doesn't, it's just like, the whole idea is to be deeply human and connect with one another and the area that we live and work in. And the number one, so then we use commitments, we use purpose and commitments as our framework. The number one commitment at these properties, be kind always. And that absolutely sets the tone and the mindset for how these team members interact. And it, over the course of time, it makes them impervious to competition. As long as they are kind, everyone else can have all the promotions, they can have the same games, but that willingness to connect in a meaningful way and be kind to one another makes this business, like, it's bulletproof, as long as we're that. So Stephanie, thank you for that call out. And for those of you that might be interested, commitment number 2, see it, own it, solve it. Kind of taking that Oz principle to personal accountability and being accountable to the purpose of this organization. If I see something, do something, and everyone being empowered to action that. So I think those first 2 commitments carry a lot of weight and have defined a lot of success for this organization. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that testimony. So I want to kind of move towards, I know that a lot of courageous leaders on this call do a lot of courageous work. And what I'm interested to know, and what I wanted to create a share around, and I want to interact in the chat for a minute, is how does what your organization believe about people show up in how you nurture and develop your team members? Just kind of a little bit of best practice sharing, like how do the team members in your organization experience that alignment as it relates to their development and growth?
Yeah, and while folks are typing, I want to share a little bit of a story. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot, Chris, because we didn't talk about sharing this story coming into this. But I'd love you to share about the challenge that you put out to that team in kind of that underdeveloped operation that you were a GM in. I'm going to try and keep it a little bit, not just put all the info out there, but basically where it was an invite, like everyone's invited and anyone can succeed in it. I think that's a great example of answering this question.
Yeah, so I went to an organization that there was some anthropology of the employee base that led it to be all act when rewarded was kind of the mindset. Okay, so if there's something for me, I might do something. Low trust, not a lot of accountability present in the organization. So I wanted to create,
like, the thing that resonates for me, because I think a lot of the folks on the call will have been in these situations. It's a group of folks that when you show up to maybe the first all hands meeting, when you're the new senior leader and you try and give an inspiring talk, you know that 3/4 of the folks out there are like, oh yeah, you're like guy number 3 and I'm going to be here after you're gone.
Yeah,
right. So
that's exactly what it was. Yeah, they're like, we were here before you, we'll be here after you, say what you want, see you next year. But the whole idea is, I said, hey, we've got to move. We've got to create some heat, some friction. We got to go do things. So we started a rewards program, and it was like an MVP program, and the rather than an of the quarter or of the year, the nomination, confirm, all of that. What the science tells us, those things need to be open access. Right, and so we set the rules. Like, I worked with our team, our managers and directors, to say, okay, what are the things that are important? Well, serving our community. Well, okay, so part of our rewards program is community service. What else is important? To be a learning organization. Okay, great. So part of our rewards program is attending an instructor-led training or completing college credit hours with our tuition reimbursement program. Okay, reliability should be rewarded. Okay, no call outs, no points, you're in, right? And so if you did community service, if you attended an instructor-led training or college credit, if you didn't receive, no points, no call outs, if you received a job well done. So we had everybody has their progressive discipline, but we built the job well done practice, which is like a positive write-up. So you had to issue or receive a job well done. And it's just, you hit these marks and you're in. And we launched this program, it was basically over a 6-month period. And we had 300 employees at this organization. The first time we ran this program, one person did it. One. And I remember her name, and I thank her so much because I get to tell this story a lot and to see where she's gone from that time. This one courageous person said, I'm going to do this because an opportunity was laid in front of me. And that person has went on to amazing things. It was such an unlock for her to see that. The next qualification period, 55 people out of 300 executed that behavior. So many times it's about laying the pathway so that people can achieve, and not having a default or undirected existence. So once we stated what we valued, that we valued learning and community service and reliability and recognizing and celebrating others, when we got real about that, we had a rewards program that made behavior desirable. If I just have to compete in a popularity contest or be nominated and somebody's going to sift through all these things and say, well, only this behavior was worthy. We start running the risk of recognizing people that are actually low performers, and then your high performers leave. So the science would tell us that open access to rewards programs are mission critical in unlocking what is perceived to be a fair and supportive culture.
Yeah, and I think, we all know that in Native enterprise, the perception of fairness is a big hurdle that we have to overcome. And I think it's probably a larger hurdle for us than it is for folks just out in the commercial space, because we're not just saying everything's fair, right? Because we have tribal members that do have advantages in employment in a lot of our spaces. So it really is, how do we make sure that our operation is as fair as possible, given the purpose of the organization? And because that's so sticky and tricky, I think it does require extra attention if we're going to really earn the trust of citizens and non-citizens alike that are members of our team.
Yeah, agreed. And there's just nuances to that. We work with organizations where tribal members get 30 days of cultural leave, but non-tribal members don't, right? That automatically creates a leadership challenge to overcome, right? How do you have a healthy culture when that's the practice? And that, there's opportunities to do that, but it has to be an intentional conversation. Someone has to prioritize fairness for that team member group in order to reconcile that practice. So we kind of talked through a number of things here, but we touched on those people practices that cultivate culture, how we recruit, our performance management processes, how we develop people, our onboarding, our recognition, even practices relative to comp and benefits or employee amenities via recognized needs. But let's speak for a minute. I want to talk a minute about mindset, and specifically senior leader mindset. And we'll get into kind of some rip from the headline stuff from last week here in a moment. But how much of it, Luke, is about senior leader mindset and how that creates the path for other folks to follow?
Yeah, I think, well, I'm going to get nerdy for a second. about the last 15 years, we've had the opportunity to do kind of next level MRI imaging studies. And so they can really look into someone's mind, see what parts of the brain are active, what parts of the brain are less active. And there was a study that came out 5-6 years ago that showed that the most successful people, or let's just call it the people with the most power, organizational authority, the empathy part of their brain started to become less active as they gained more power, more authority. And it's a little bit of a paradox because a lot of leaders, the way that they kind of ascend the ladder is by really having pretty high emotional intelligence and the ability to deal with different types of people, to have meaningful relationships with different types of people. But then because of that success, they get into these feedback loops where they only hear about what's going right. And people start to believe that, you know, the sun always shines on them. They're the smartest person in the room. All of these things that aren't true, right? And then their success, like, they cap out because they're not able to, once that empathy shuts down and they think that they're the smartest person in any room, they're not able to receive feedback. People are afraid to give them feedback, right? And we can get really stuck and plateaued. And as the environment changes, as our workforce demands different things, right, it can be really difficult for someone to break out. So when Chris talks about mindset, for us, the most important components of mindset are that leaders are willing to have a growth mindset, which growth mindset is essentially the belief that I can change and learn new things and that I don't know it all. That with hard work, I can learn new skills, right? That's also important for our frontline employees, for everyone on the team, right? If we can help people really embrace their roles in the world that they're in from a place of growth, I can perform differently. I can do new things if I work hard, if I get the resources I need. The other piece of mindset, really the second thing that we care about, is inward versus outward mindset. And so inward mindset is really around, am I getting what I need? Versus outward mindset, is my community, are the people around me getting the resources and what they need? So when we have those conversations with senior leaders, you know, oftentimes we're really trying to give them a path to say, in what areas are we having a set mindset instead of a growth mindset? Right? Let's brainstorm that. Let's actually put it on sticky notes. Let's put it on a piece of paper, right? In what areas are we having an inward mindset, mostly focused on what we need, right? Monthly revenue targets to be hit, right? This CapEx project to be approved, whatever it is, right? Versus outward mindset. What is it that our team, the tribal community that we exist to empower, right? Or give resources to, how are they benefiting? How am I making sure that my community is growing? And again, literally, let's brainstorm. Let's write it down. Let's put it up there, and hopefully, you know, end a session with some actionable items where we can practice, because our brains are plastic, right? They can change, they can move, and if we practice growing and we practice being outward, that's a positive thing. And hopefully, we don't end up in that empathy shrinking part of our brain space.
Yeah, and I think so when we combine a growth mindset with an outward mindset, we lovingly refer to that as an igniter mindset, because it really lights and activates and make these folks make communities vibrant. The other thing about mindset is a lot of times leaders will wonder why, how come I'm not getting this result, or my ideas aren't spreading, or, you know, why is this the case? And what I typically will communicate is what we give to other people is exactly what we get back. When we come to people from a place of love and care and respect and understanding, we're all here to do the same thing. And that's what I love about NAHRA, right? Like, we are all doing the same work every day. And it's easy for me to feel full and just so much meaning in having this conversation. But leaders have to take to the world and the people around them, they're only going to get back what they give. So if they approach everything from that place of outward mindset, love, care, and respect, their ideas are going to grow. They're going to have influence, but they can't transact and say, this is the way it needs to be just because. Like, they might be right, but nobody wants to hear it. Like, it's not going to get activated. So there's a huge mindset component to being able to build vibrant, thriving communities, whether that's a work community or the community that we serve with, resources. So kind of with that, we pulled something from the headlines last week. And Luke, a little bit of background, just kind of share where this idea come from. And this will be kind of the last thing we cover before you wrap, but where'd the idea come from to do this, and why is it going to be so fun to talk about here in the next 5 minutes?
Yeah, so so I read this letter that Elon Musk sent to all his employees. He sent a very similar letter to SpaceX employees and to Tesla employees. And basically, I mean, we'll read it in a second. You read it and you're just kind of like, it just makes you a little bit sick to your stomach, at least me, right? And I was thinking about, like, why does this make me feel bad? Why does this make me feel bad for the folks who received this? And so I'll read it, and then let's jump into kind of like, that helped me think through what was it that was disturbing. So essentially, the story is he sent a memo to his senior leadership team that leaked on Twitter, and then shortly after it leaked, he sent this out to everyone else because he had kind of been outed. So he says, to be super clear, everyone at Tesla is required to spend a minimum of 40 hours in the office per week. Moreover, the office must be where your actual colleagues are located, not some remote pseudo office. If you don't show up, we will assume you have resigned. The more senior you are, the more visible must be your presence. That's why I lived in the factory so much, so that those on the line could see me working alongside them. If I had not done that, Tesla would long ago have gone bankrupt. There are, of course, companies that don't require this, but when was the last time they shipped a great new product? It's been a while. Tesla has and will create and actually manufacture the most exciting and meaningful products of any company on earth. This will not happen by phoning it in. So we study what's happening in the workforce. And I know, especially in this tech sector, like, people got this and they just got on LinkedIn and Indeed and started looking for jobs, right? And Elon does have the authority as the owner to be able to ask people to do whatever he wants. But as we reflected on, like, what doesn't feel right about this, to me, what doesn't feel right is that it's purely transactional. He takes this relationship from employer to employee, from team members working together, and says, oh, all this is like, I give you dollars and you give me hours. And because I give you dollars, like, and you give me hours, I can tell you what to do during those hours and where to do those hours and what's most important. And it makes the relationship purely a transaction. And that's not what people are wanting right now. People are wanting to do something with their 40 hours a week, or however much time it is. For most of us, it's more than that, right? They want to do something that aligns with their personal values and has some measure of importance and resonates with them, right? And this lack of looking at individual situation, as someone mentioned in the chat earlier, like, what we do when someone has a personal emergency shows our character, right? There are people who receive this letter that have kids with special needs, that they've now reshaped their whole lives and have found win-wins, that they can be a better caregiver and still get their work done, right? There are people with elders that they care for, and they were able to cut an hour or 2 hours out of commuting so that they can give better care to those people, right? So this is not taking into account individual needs and honestly just what's happening in the market, right? So even from a purely capitalist standpoint, this is not a smart approach. So we decided to do Elon a favor, and we rewrote his letter for him. So to be super clear, first off, thank you for your continued commitment to our shared purpose. And this is actually Tesla's shared purpose. So I looked it up. To accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, right? No mention of that in his first letter, right? And that's what people are there for. They want to be connected to that. The last 2 years have tested our commitment to this purpose, but you've risen above the challenges, and here we all are, continuing to innovate new and better ways to live it out. Many of you are asking about a return to the office policy. I won't pretend to know what the next 2 years will hold, but I know many of us are trying to discern how much time to spend back in the office now that it's a safer choice. I personally like the idea of spending more time in face-to-face collaboration, especially for leaders who should be available for their team members, right? So he has a point there, right? We're not just saying he's a dumb guy. He's obviously not. But everyone's situation is different. I trust leaders to act with positive intent and innovate, no matter the solution they land on for this season for their teams. Here's my ask of you as individuals. 1, participate in helping our leaders discern our next steps. If you have ideas on how to evolve our thinking, share them. I'll personally review any ideas on new models of employment that are sent my way. Number 2, be fair. We are a fair community. If you see something that isn't fair or sparks questions related to equity for all team members, please raise the flag quickly so we can address and clarify any ambiguity as best we can. And 3, stay focused on our purpose. If you see ideas that allow us to minimize our environmental impact and how we design employment, please share. So tying in how we work with what our purpose is, right? Making that clear narrative built around our purpose. As all companies are coming to realize these days, employment at Tesla is a product and should be treated as such. Other companies may be stuck in the past, but we should aim to ship the most exciting and meaningful work experience of any company on earth. So he's sitting there in his first letter saying, if we don't all come to the office, how are we going to ship the best product? Instead of what doing the most smart employers are doing right now, which is looking at their employment experience, their employee experience as a product. How innovative can we be about the product that we are creating and offering to the workforce? Because to be clear, we are competing with other people. And if our product doesn't stand up to it, right, we're not going to win. Right? So if he would think about employment that way, I think he'd be a little bit further ahead. And then last paragraph, being the best version of Tesla will not happen by phoning it in. No matter where you work and how you engage, you're invited to bring your whole self to your work at Tesla. My commitment to you is that the members of the senior leadership team and myself will do the same. So, a little bit different narrative.
Yeah, and I think it really highlights the power of narrative and how intention can change the game, right? And it's kind of an issue with the whole, fly off the handle on Twitter, and then I'm stuck to saying something that I was emotionally hijacked to produce. Like, it's not intentional, right? And that ties us all the way back to where we started. It is the intention to align what we do with what we believe, so that people understand without ambiguity what we stand for. And that's effectively how organizational character is reflected within the employee experience. And with that, I want to thank everyone that's given of their time, their most valuable resource, to spend a little bit of it with us today. I thank you for that. I have a lot of gratitude for the last hour, and just from here, I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that we have a podcast where we talk about these things on a weekly basis. It's called Magic in the Room. It's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. So feel free to check it out. We talk about all things organizational design and leadership, and have a little fun along the way. So thank you. And with that, let's open it up for any discussion or questions. Janet, I'll give it back to you.
Hey, I've got to say thank you too. And I just want to say, I view this as just the start or continuing of a conversation. And we're super excited to continue it in San Antonio. So hopefully everyone there, we're all prepped and ready. So super exciting to continue the conversation and get to know people more, and looking forward to it.
I thank you both, and I too, I have my beautiful mug. And for those who want to see Purpose and Performance, they're going to be in San Antonio. So we're really excited that they're going to be presenting and get to hang out with NAHRA. And it's not too late to register. So if you go onto our website at NAHRA.org, events is there. Please register for the conference, and would love to open it up on the chat box to see if you have any comments or any questions that Chris and Luke can help you with.
Even if it's a
There's something
takeaway.
from Mary.
Yeah, Mary. So I see, any advice for someone who's passionate about employee experience and trying to break into this industry? So I could try and come up with 3 or 4 things right now, but Mary, I'd say, we have some slides we didn't share today that I think really are the crux of this, like how we think about the science of organizations, and take that science and move it into creating meaningful employee experience. I'd say let's just figure out a time to get on a call. You can email Chris or I both, and we would love to just connect and talk to you. So we want to be committed to giving anyone time where it would be helpful. Yeah, but essentially it's this is the purpose to profit chain. In any service environment, this is where revenue comes from, whether people know it or not. Shared purpose, if we get clear on that, it's what we've talked about this last hour. It defines the employee experience. A positive employee experience leads to engagement, right? And engagement, we know, leads to better levels of service, customer satisfaction, loyalty, and then that's what creates revenue growth. The problem is when we see people only focusing on those last 4 that are really outcomes, right? That's transactional. Hey, what's our guest service training program, right? I'm only going to focus on value-added service. You have to do these things. You have to say these words, rather than, first, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give you excellent service in your employee experience. And then, yeah, I might have to share with you some words or some technique, but you will automatically, because we're human beings, provide better service to our customers and guests. So we say folks who focus on the first few, the inputs, are taking a more transformational approach. So a little bit of a tangent, but Mary, yeah, love for you to reach out, and even career pathing and what educational opportunities are out there, and love to get people connected.
Wonderful. We're coming close to our time, and Chris, Luke, you both are amazing. I can sit hours just listening, and I wish I knew you both when I worked at a casino. Man, I learned so much from y'all today. It was great. And once again, the presentation will be available for you at the NAHRA YouTube channel by this afternoon. And Chris and Luke put their email address. If you, do you have your email address on here?
I'll put it in the chat as well, but you should be able to get it through clicking on our names if you're on here, but you can copy and paste what I'll put in here as well.
Okay, awesome. And join them for their podcast. It's great. We share it in NAHRA. We've shared it on our NAHRA social media, and it's really cool. So Chris and Luke, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone that has participated today. And we look forward to seeing you in San Antonio.
Can't wait to be there. Thank you, Janet. And thank you to everyone on the call for the amazing, courageous work you do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.